Super license number 10, let's go get some gold. Rightio, so coming down to the first turn, we're going to be looking out for a marker board on the left, which is the 100 board there. We want to be braking a little bit before that, a little bit too late, we'll end up in the wet stuff on the outside of the turn. Bring it down to first gear, tuck it in by this curb, but don't run over the curb because it has no grip and you'll probably understeer a little bit if you use it. Just narrowly avoid that, then very, very, very gently ease on that throttle, 20-50%. Then only when you're in a straight line, that's when you begin accelerating. Avoid hitting that curb on the outside because again it has no grip and you'll probably spin out. Now down to a rouge, where this is a very complicated corner. I don't actually know if I'm doing it 100% correctly, but this is how I'm doing it. First there's like a little black sign there. You want to lift before this, and then after you lift you want to begin turning slightly and aim yourself towards this curb on the left here, very slightly, dead straight line here, and once you get over the curb you can maybe brake a little bit, but the way I do it, I brake a little bit while applying a little bit of throttle as well to help stabilize the car. And then coming up the hill, I want to avoid using too much of this inside curb because you hit too much and it's going to throw you off. So as I'm going up the hill, I'm about 30-50% on the throttle to help stabilize the car while pushing it up the hill, carrying some speed up there. Keeping the line as straight as possible. The car might swing to the right, you've got to be prepared to catch that. You can cut over the curb at the top here, but bear in mind that it's going to be slippery, so only keep half throttle around here. Straighten the car up without running onto the curb, and only when you're straight, and I mean straight, that's when you can get to 100% throttle. Down the straight, we've got a few seconds to breathe, not really, because right here, even on the straight, you have to be careful. You have to move towards the middle of the track because on each side of the track it's wet, and you drive on either side of this track, right on the outsides, it's going to pull you off the track if you touch the wet stuff. So stay in the middle, come back towards the outside at the end of the straight, and then at the 150 board, then you can start braking, pretty much exactly alongside the board. Down to second gear, and you want to carry a little bit of speed, a little bit of trail braking, and here we want to avoid the inside curb because it's slippery again, we'll have less grip. So narrowly avoid the curb, then a little burst between the two, then again avoid the inside curb, tiny little burst on the throttle, and then right about where I'm showing on screen now, where the arrows are, you want to nip the brake just a little bit, and then again we're going to try and narrowly avoid the inside curb because it's very slippery. You want to tuck the car right alongside next to it. I actually used a little bit there. On exit we want to avoid the outside curb because again it's slippery. Then once you're in a dead straight line you can start accelerating. Use the 100 board here as a reference, and then you want to brake pretty much alongside it. Downshifting to second and holding the car right along this inside line here. You don't want to drift out too wide because there's wet track out there, and as soon as you get on there, you're stuck out there. Again, slowly bring the car into a straight line, and then a little burst in the straight line here. Then again, we're looking for those little orange marks on the fence as our braking references. Want to brake between them just a little bit, and then carry some speed. Again on the apex, avoiding the curbs. We're basically dancing between the curbs the entire way around this track. Once you're in a straight line, you get to 100% throttle again. Down to the next turn, we're going to be using the start of this curb and that 50 board there. Between those, we want to be braking. Down to third gear, be careful the rear might kick out here. If you brake a little bit earlier, you might avoid that. Then just be gentle with the throttle through here. The car will start to rotate a little bit if you don't have traction control, and then only, again, once you're straight, then you can pick up the throttle to 100% again. Little burst again to the next corner, just after the 100 board, we want to be braking down to second gear. And once again, tucking the car right alongside the curbs. Little burst here, and then alongside the left curb, and avoiding the outside curb. And then just the whole way around, be super gentle on the throttle, because if you punch it a little too hard, you're going to spin. There's a lot of braking references here. I've just put them on screen. You can use. I've put the red sort of dot on the screen where you should be braking. Again, just dodging the curbs, carrying speed, carrying as much speed as you can between the curbs without actually touching them. This turn, I've slowed it down a little bit so you can see my throttle inputs a little more clearly. Just nipping on that inside curb. Picking up the throttle, just using that throttle to help rotate the car a little bit, and then only once I'm really straight on exit, that's when I'm hard on the throttle again. Now, the most difficult part of this track, Blanche Mont. Here you want to start, what I've been doing is I've been lifting a little bit before this sign, and you want to stay on the inside of this first initial left turn, because if you're carrying too much speed, it's going to throw you out into the wet line on the outside, so try tuck it in. I actually messed this up a little bit. I caught a little bit of oversteer, and then it threw me a little wide, and then my tail end caught on the wet line, so I got a bit sideways. I had to catch it, so I'm straight again. Okay, so my pants are a little bit more brown now, but we're in a straight line again. I'm going to use the brakes a little bit to slow us down, just to bring us around this corner safely, using a little bit of throttle right around here. This entire section, I don't really want to drop completely off the throttle because then the car becomes more unstable. I just caught the outside curb there. You only notice I get to full throttle after I get off the curb again, and then here for the final braking point, we're braking alongside the 150 board, hard into the final chicane, down to first gear, and we can cut pretty much all the way across this initial curb. So use all of it, but don't accelerate on it, otherwise you're going to spin. Then right between the two, you can give it a mini burst on the throttle, and then again we're coasting right over the final turn. The curbs, there's a little bit of a flat spot on the curb, I use that, and then very slowly or very cautiously we want to begin picking up the throttle onto the final straight towards the line, and that's a 22.5 for this lap, so that's well into the gold section. If you can pick up these tips, then you should be into the golds with some practice. Just one thing I want to say is that if you're attempting this without traction control and you are really struggling with it, put traction control on, because it's going to save you a lot of frustration and time. And from my experience, most of the corners on this track are actually not too bad. As long as you're controlling your throttle enough and keeping between the curbs, you should be okay. And obviously if you're carrying enough speed. For me, it's the first turn, Eau Rouge, Rayon, and Blanche. Those three places where I find the most difficulty. Because in the first turn, it's probably the tightest turn on the track, arguably the last corner as well. But for the first turn, you're pushing really hard to get as much time as you can at the start of your lap. You've got to be super cautious on your throttle coming out of that tight turn, because you're super likely to wheel spin if you just nail the throttle there. Even half throttle or even 20% throttle, it's so easy to spin your car there. When you're entering a Rouge, if you are turning at all and you touch the brake pedal, you are almost 100% guaranteed to spin. So try do what I've shown you in this video. Ideally, if you want to brake at pretty much any point in the lap, make sure you are braking in a straight line. If you're braking while you're turning, you are probably gonna spin or things aren't gonna go your way. And into both the Rouge, Rayon and Blanchemont, the fast turns on this track, don't suddenly drop your throttle, because that will cause a sudden instability in your car, and it's probably gonna make you spin as well. So the best thing to probably do is to carry a little bit of throttle through those turns so that the car's not floating around without throttle input. And for Blanchemont, the fast corner towards the end of the lap, you just got to be careful with your line, particularly the first part of it, where I got sideways. Keep more towards the inside, just avoid getting near that wet line, because as soon as your tail end catches that wet, it's going to send you all over the place. I would really suggest just to lift early there and play it safe, because if you got to this point, I'm assuming you've done pretty well through the rest of the lap. Just take this section easy and get yourself to the end of the lap. And please, when you're coming out of the last turn, just be cautious. Don't bin it on the final turn, because that's going to suck. So now I'm going to show the lap again without any pauses or anything like that, without me talking, so you guys can see it a bit clearer. And then after that I'll do a third person view for those of you who race in third person. I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.